ladies and gentlemen. This is Eddie Marcus again. I really want to invite you to give me a few moments of your time. There's some information that I want to share with you that I'm hoping will help you in your life. Now, I'm saying that from the perspective that since 1988, I believe, I've sought after the United States presidency at least 3 times. And because I feel that I was worthy to serve this nation, and I feel that my life has some pertinent value that you might be able to benefit from. As I make this presentation to you, I want to inform you I'm not going to try to be politically correct. Because who says that political correctness is the key or means anything? What it really is, it's a statement of trying to ease people's ideology or thoughts or reference or respect for an individual. But I don't really need any of your respect that you would give me as an individual or anything at this date in my life. There was a time when I probably would have appreciated it, but I didn't get it. So what I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is this. My name, Eddie Marcus, is a name that I received from adoption. My mother, when I was born, was a child. So I received my mother's maiden name, Jackson. But my mother, by being a child, she couldn't do anything for me but birth me. And her mother, my grandmother, was relatively young at the time, had maybe about 8 or 9 children. And so she couldn't do anything for me either. Keep in mind that at this time, my relatives were basically sharecropping in Mississippi, which just is a half step or a quarter step up from slavery. But my great-grandparents, their children were basically grown, and so they took me in and raised me. And when I started going to school, I found out that kids' last name usually was their father's name. I heard my father's name was Porter, so I just stuck it on Eddie Porter instead of Eddie Jackson. And I used that name up until my graduation or my senior year, I believe, from high school. I got adopted by my great-great-uncle. Now, I'm saying these things to you, ladies and gentlemen, because today is very important. I went through childhood like most of you. I experienced a lot of things. I grew up in the church, and I believed what I was taught in the Bible or at church. I believed that. Why wouldn't I believe it? I didn't have any problem arguing with my English language, and it was English then. I had no problem. So why would I have a problem with believing what the Bible was telling me? I noticed people that went to church didn't follow the Bible. They didn't follow the direction of the Bible. And I gathered it was just because the Bible was asking them to be too good. And they didn't want to be that good. And I say that because as a child, while I admired the Bible, I still didn't want to be too good because they explained the Bible in such a way that it would knock out all my fun. I wouldn't be able to have my girlfriends. I wouldn't be able to try to have some sex if I wanted it as I got older. And I knew these things was going to happen. And so I just put that part of God on the back burner. I did fell in love. Jesus was my idol. I heard that the idolization was something that was unacceptable, but I idolized Jesus. I wanted to walk on water, and I wanted to heal the sick, all that kind of good stuff. I wanted to do that because it was fantastic. Can you imagine? Now, I must admit that in my lifetime, growing up nowadays, you have so many people coming to you telling you that that stuff is fiction. You have so many avenues of information telling you that it was all, paganism wrapped up in a new form to control and manipulate people. Something that came up back in the days of, what's the name of Constantine, who and I'm not going to explain that to you. You go research that, see what happened with Constantine, find out what happened with King James, how he got introduced into all of this. This is new information that came to me as a man, a middle-aged man. I'm an old man now, but a middle-aged man then. And so you think about, wow, what if this stuff isn't true? Well, I don't really question whether the scriptures are true nowadays. This is one thing I can say. I really don't know whether God is real. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. Stuff that I couldn't actually label or put my hands on or identify from past experience or something. No, because I have found out that people lie. People got an agenda. Black people in America. When you do your research now, most black people haven't had that access to research because they've been so dumbed down they don't even think that these things are possible. But when you do your research, you find out black people, wherever they came from, were some fantastic people. Just as fantastic as anybody else. I'm not going to try to say that they were better or more fantastic. I've heard, but I'm just going to say they were just as fantastic as anyone else. But in America, all of that information was left out. When you read American history, you would think of black people entered into the scene as slaves. And the only time they started doing something to try to, well, you know about the Underground Railroad, you think about people who were trying to end slavery and trying to support the people who wanted to get out of slavery. But as far as making these strange challenges for freedom and liberation, we start talking about Dr. Martin Luther King and the freedom struggles of the 60s and 50s and 60s and so on and so forth, as if that was the beginning when black people started waking up. Well, why would that happen? Somebody said, during those times, the loser of the war, the loser of the struggle got a chance to write the history books. And then what they did, they left black people out because it served their purpose. Black people, to them, were less than human. They were supposed to be slaves, not respected, and all these kinds of things. So that tells you, give you sort of a picture of what we as black people had to go through. But ladies and gentlemen, when it comes down to God, there are a couple of things that I do know. I have seen miracles. And when I say miracles, I'm talking about things happen that human beings had nothing to do with. Couldn't have done it. And so I attribute that to God. And the reason I attribute it to God is because, well, as I said, I was taught about God and I believed. But if it's untrue, then it was me. So it had no apprehension, I had no apprehension whatsoever in attributing these things. And that allows me to know that there's a power unseen that can do things that people who you can see cannot do. I know that for a fact. So I consider that being a sign of God. Now, if God isn't real and all that other kind of stuff, there is a power for me, that I have to respect. Now, what am I trying to get you to see? Oh, I don't know if I mentioned it to you. Yes, I think I did. What am I trying to get you to see? I'm trying to get you to see something new and a reason for it. When I left high school, I was too poor to go to college. I never would have gone to college, but in high school, I played music. A lot of us people who could not afford to go to college, people out of the cotton fields and stuff, got our attachment to music. And because of music in high school, we were able to get scholarships to go to college. So I went to college on a musical scholarship. Thank God for that. Or thank the music for that. Got out of college, just like most people, not all people, but most people, you ready to have some fun. So got out, get a job, get a better job, started working for the government, an agent for the Veterans Administration. Everything's going fine. You get yourself out doing audits for the Veterans Administration, and in these audits, sometimes you find yourself doing some small handwork as an agency representative, not as an individual, but as an agency representative from the Veterans Administration, and doing some things with the FBI. But more than all of that, ladies and gentlemen, it was the society. Chicago, you know what you hear about Chicago. I'm looking at all of this poverty. I'm looking at all this crime, and I'm looking at all this violence. And in my mind, in my heart, in my I know why it exists. And I want to do something about it, but I'm too busy having fun. So I put it on the back burner. But I keep on and going on till I get to a point that I refuse to just go on any longer. I say, I have to change things. The man known as Dr. Martin Luther King had been killed. And as far as I could see, he and that movement was the only one that had really amassed any type of real changes. I mean, things that were happening afterwards might have brought about some changes, but I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell what all these other organizations were doing as far as benefit for the nation or for black people. So as far as I was concerned, they needed another Dr. King, but not, when I say another Dr. King, I'm talking about somebody who's committed. So I decided that I would take on that road. One of the first things I had to do was get off that comfort zone. See, working at the Veterans Administration, I had a nice job, respected, to wear three-piece suits, ride around in nice cars, had money in my pocket. My old lady worked for the Social Security Administration. We weren't necessarily poor. We weren't well-to-do, as we know well-to-do to mean. But we were comfortable, a little bit more comfortable. So I knew that I had to break that. So one of the first things I did was let the job go. I stopped working for the Veterans Administration, but I needed some money. So I started washing windows at a storefront. My reason for washing windows because I needed time to concentrate. I needed time to pray. I needed time to understand what steps would have to be made in order to achieve the things that were welding up in me. And washing windows, I didn't have to think about washing windows. That just happened naturally. But I could think about the future. Well, that did not set too good with my first wife, and she gave me an ultimatum. I have to change and become the man who was going to change the world or conquer the world by amassing goods and things for myself or us, or I was going to lose her. So it ended up, I lost her. And just to show her how much I cared about her, it was, I believe, when the hostages were taken in Iran. I decided to join the military, join the Navy, go in the Persian Gulf area in case a war started, and perhaps I could lose my life and my wife could get that check, because check money is so important in the world society today. So I went there, but I didn't get killed. I got a chance to travel and see parts of the world perhaps that I would never have seen had it not been for that. So I have to be grateful for that. And my ex-wife went on and married somebody else, so that life went on. Now, what I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, is this. I wanted you to know where I moved from there. Sure, I remarried. And my ambition was the same. Change this country. Now, what kind of change could I offer? I listen to people today as they look at Donald Trump, somebody who has not been in politics, as they look at Sanders, who have been in politics, but is an older guy like myself. I think I might be a couple of years older than he is. And I see they call him a socialist, and that's like a curse for anybody in America to be leaning toward that direction. And I look at these politicians, and I remember back in '88, I believe, it's when I told the world that I wanted to be president of the United States. I didn't have any money, but this is why I told them. All my life I watched people, and I've noticed something about them. I noticed that there are so many things that are common amongst them. I grew up in that slavery society, but I did not grow up hating white people. I had no problem with white people as long as they respected me and treated us right. And even if they didn't treat us right, I still didn't have any major problem with it to bring about hate. So I grew up thinking that all people were of the same maker. And I drew this conclusion because we all needed the same things to survive. We needed food, clothing, shelter. Well, we needed oxygen and all of the other natural stuff. But we needed food, we needed clothing, we needed shelter. And if we wanted to progress, we needed education. And if we wanted to live, we needed health care. And in order to achieve these things, we needed somebody to do it. So we recognized recognized that human beings had gifts and talents that would allow them to indulge themselves in this process and take from this big earth that was given to us, we didn't make it, given to us because we didn't bring anything into it, we take nothing out of it, that it was for all of us. That was no problem with me. Every human being in America, every human being on earth needed food, clothing, shelter, education, healthcare, and a job. Now, I'm going to speed this thing up a little bit. When I ran for president, that's what I had in mind. I wanted to make sure that every American had these things that were common amongst us. Every black man, every white man, every black woman, every white woman, every child, every old person would have these things because the power that I understood that was institutional in this process required it. And so, stepping out as a candidate for president, I stepped out as a write-in. Nobody was going to give me any money. I knew that. As a write-in. But I thought that people had enough sense to know that since all of these things were common amongst them, and so some people had such a hard time acquiring them, that the fact that here's a guy says he wants to be president of the United States and he's promised these things to you and he's shown you how he's going to produce them, that the word would catch. The telephones would start jumping. People who had access to inform others, it would start moving. And all of a sudden, while people are spending money out here telling you what they're going to do, but not how they're going to do it, this campaign would be known across the nation. And I would basically shock the world by being the first write-in president. Oh, I deceived myself that time. But it didn't stop me. It just seemed like every time it came down for election for a president, I was there as a write-in, writing letters across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, in this pursuit, during those times, it's very few governors that I haven't tried to communicate with. Very few United States Congresses that I did not try to communicate with. Very few churches across this country that I did not try to communicate with. In other words, organizations didn't care where you were.